Hello, we're back. Now I get to interview my good friend Jessica DeLeon. She is a spiritual counselor as well as an energetic healer. Yes, I got it. Welcome, Jessica.
Thank you for having me,
It's
Anita.
so funny, like you just got here, right?
The
So
tables have turned.
tables have turned. We're putting her in the hot seat now. So, Jessica, it was really funny when we met because I remember telling you we were building homes
Mhm.
and in Ensenada. And I remember telling you, like, oh my gosh, I had this vision too of a bunch of little homes and animals and children. And I remember that I couldn't find the photo. And the next morning when I showed you, you said, I looked last night and I couldn't find anything with so much detail.
Yeah.
So my first question to you
Mhm.
is, why did you look? Were you wondering if I was going to try and trick you?
No, I'm a very, like, visual learner, and so I love artwork, and I love like, when I have, like, a really, vivid dream, I always, like, try to find a visual representation of that, kind of like as an anchor or
Yes.
something. And I think you and I have a special bond that, we've only known each other maybe 2 years now,
I don't even know if it's been that long,
but it
honestly.
was that kismet, like, connection when I met you. It was just like, "Oh, I remember you." And so, and I respect the visions that you see, and I think that they're prophetic. And, when people share with me about their dreams and their visions and things like that, I'm like, "Let's manifest it. Let's birth it."
Well,
So,
we're birthing that ranch,
yes,
right?
we are.
Because we both saw it.
Yeah.
So, Jessica, I also found out your story was pretty incredible. And I think our audience also needs to hear it because one, you're willing to tell it.
I am.
And not so many people are,
Yeah.
right, ready. But I was grateful that you're ready and
Mhm.
you want people to know. So what is the reason why you want to share your story?
Um, I think that you and I have a similar calling on our hearts, that it's important to share our stories. I think that it's important for people to know that this life that we live it did not come without trials and tribulations, and those moments, those really dark, really ugly, really scary moments, are arguably the most important moments in our
Yep.
lives. And, for me, it is liberating to share my story, because it's medicinal for me, and I know that it's medicinal for other people to hear
Mhm.
about my story as well. So
So let's start.
where do I start?
Where do you start? You know what? Let's start. I guess let's start where you ended up in your transformational training. What first took you to that transformational course?
So, I graduated from the University of Santa Monica in their spiritual psychology program, and that was really because of my husband. When he and I met, he was in his second year in their program, and there's this framework and this language that he was using that I was pretty desperate for, to be honest. And so I went there just with the intention of learning this language and understanding these principles and practices, just to kind of, help navigate life with a little
Hmm.
bit more ease and a little bit more grace. Um, and then I got to experience what it felt like to be facilitated by somebody who was really, really skilled. And facilitated is essentially being counseled by
Hmm.
somebody. And in spiritual psychology, it's very it's client centered. So it's based on the premise that, if we have the courage to go inside, that I hold the wisdom to heal what I'm currently experiencing. And it's not about advice giving or anything like that. Um, and then my husband was the one to reflect back to me that I was a skilled facilitator, that that was just something that was very natural to me,
So natural.
whether it was because I'm the firstborn, or I think, you and I are both considered ourselves to be highly sensitive people, to be empathic. And for me, I can deeply sense when someone is suffering.
Hmm.
And in the past, before having this framework, experiencing the suffering of others would literally put me into a state of paralysis. And so learning this framework of spiritual psychology has been a saving grace for me. Absolutely.
Well, I kind of want to go back though to
Mhm.
Um, I was going what the because you went to that, life altering class, right? It wasn't a class, it was
Are we talking about Landmark?
yes,
Yes.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. I didn't
So
wanna
let's
say the
just get
name,
into
but
it.
yeah.
We'll get into it.
Let's get to the dirt.
And
Go.
I'm not gonna there's no judgment. This is my personal experience of
Mhm.
what I experienced in my life. And so I'm just sharing from this is my story and my
Mhm. Yes,
experience.
and
So
it's your story.
no judgment to any organizations or anything like that. But so I went to school with the intention of being a teacher. I went to Loyola Marymount University. And this is I was finishing like our credentialing program right when the housing market crashed. So all of us student teachers were watching our master teachers get pink slipped and laid off.
Ooh.
And I had gone to this, private Catholic school, was not a cheap investment, and all of us student teachers are looking at each other like, oh my God, what are we going to do? We're not going to get hired. And so luckily, I got hired as a behavior therapist for children with special needs, and I did that for many years. And
Which can be super challenging.
it's super challenging. And I was really good at it. I was really, really good at it. And if you know anybody that's worked in that field, there's not a lot of men in the field. It's mostly women. And so me
Yes.
being 5'11" and strong, I got the most difficult kiddos. So like the most aggressive and the most
Mhm.
violent. Um, and that took its toll. And there was one kiddo in particular, who would, try and stab his teacher with scissors, and I would have to put him in restraint holds, and I eventually threw my back out, and I had to go out on disability. And that was, like, one of my first kind of real come to Jesus moments, because I really felt like I was doing the Lord's work, like, this is really important,
Mhm.
working with this demographic, and now I was, like, becoming physically disabled, and that was the first time in my life when I started experiencing anxiety and depression. I would have, like, literal, like, night terrors
Wow.
in anticipation of dealing with
Oh.
some of these kiddos that were really, really violent. Um, and so when I was out on disability, I had to kind of, have this raw conversation with myself, like, "I can't continue to do this. This is not serving me." So at the time, I had a friend who was working in finance, and she was making a ton of money, and she invited me to come work with her at this large insurance company, and so I did that. I got my Series 6 and 63, and I was working as a financial services professional, and, I was hired by this, I'll say, Wolf of Wall Street type of character,
Mhm.
and, definitely, like, working in a culture where it was, you know
Money driven.
yes, and so working insane hours during the week, very sales driven, like, almost to the point of emotional manipulation, and I'll be honest.
Mhm.
Um, but then I was making more money than I knew what to do with. I mean, I had never made so much money before in my life. And at the time I was living in LA, and my roommate at the time was um, uh, like a professional partier, for lack of a better word. She was a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun together. So I was living this season of my life of sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
just insane hours of work during the week, and then the weekends we were partying our little butts off.
Which is very common for
Yeah, but
high
if you
driven
know me,
careers.
I'm a firstborn Italian Aries, so like my level of intensity is like a little bit
Extreme.
extreme.
Extra? Is it because I'm the middle child that I'm the same? Maybe that's why we
I
get
don't
along
know.
so
I
well.
don't know. So yeah, that was fun for a little while, and then at some point, I started to just really feel like I had fallen off of my soul path.
Yeah.
Like I felt so unfulfilled by what I was doing. I felt incredibly lost, and a colleague of my time at the time, she recommended that I do the Landmark Forum, and some people swear that this is like the most life-changing decision that they've ever made. And it was for me, but it also catapulted me into like a very catastrophic experience in my life. So for those who know what the Landmark Forum is, it's to me, it was advertised as like a self-help kind of self-realization
Mhm.
workshop or what
Yeah.
have you.
The weekend, right? It's
Yeah,
a whole
it's a
weekend, full
weekend.
week.
So I did that. Whenever I do anything, I go all the way in, and I went all the way in. And so I did the forum, and then I did their advanced forum back to back. And mind you, I was already in a very delicate situation. Like I was already experiencing pretty severe anxiety and depression. Like
Okay.
not I wasn't well at all going into that.
Mhm.
Um, and so I did that, and it was essentially this perfect storm. So I do the Landmark, and that experience, it really, whether it's intended or not, it is to, break you down and then
Yes.
build you up. And so
Mhm.
it broke me open. And again, I was simultaneously partying really hard as well. So there was drugs and just this really out of control lifestyle, and then this really violent shift in my perception of awareness and my reality. And so it was this perfect storm that I created. I take full responsibility that manifested as like a manic psychotic episode.
Okay.
So I remember being in this in between place. Like I had like one pinky toe in this physical reality, and then most of me was kind of in this altered state. Um, and so I stopped sleeping, and my
Wow.
sister was the one who was the first one to really clue into the fact that something was wrong with me. And so she got my parents involved, and they came and picked me up from my apartment, took me back to my parents' house, and then kind of tried to figure out what to do because I was not Jessica anymore. I was just really in this altered state where I would, again, not sleeping, and then, saying really, looking back, it was prophetic what I was saying because I was in this kind of shamanic altered state, but really still fragmented. So
Mhm.
I would start hysterically crying at points, and um, yeah, just it was clearly having some form of episode. So my parents sought psychiatric assistance, and it was recommended that they do a 5150 on me, which is an involuntary hold at a
Yes.
psychiatric hospital.
For what, 14 days?
It
Yes?
was no, it was 4 days.
4 days.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So it was, or 5 days. It's usually like a 72-hour hold, and then they'll decide whether or not they're going to keep you a day to day. So so I had the full girl interrupted experience. I was placed in a mental health facility against my will. I tried to escape. It took several staff member to hold me down and inject me with a sedative to keep me there. Um, and if you know anybody that has had this experience, you have to comply with the treatment protocol in order to be released. So you essentially lose all of your rights. And me being, I was over 18 at the time, so there's only so much information that the hospital will share with your
Loved ones.
guardians because you're an
Adult.
adult. And so um I can only imagine what my family was experiencing because you're locked away, and then your family doesn't have any say so on what procedures or treatments that they're using with you. So
Wow.
I was placed on like a cocktail of pharmaceutical drugs. And I realized like on day 2, like, okay, I have to comply with what they want me to do in order to get out of here. Like I was like a wild animal. Like how can I get out of here? It was terrifying, to be completely frank.
But you were aware.
I was aware. I mean, I can recall what happened from my perspective, but I can see how I wasn't safe. I could have been at that state. I could have been, I could have driven. I could have hurt myself. I see, why my family made that decision, and I support that at this point because it was the most important thing that's ever happened to me. It took me a long time to get to this,
Right.
like there was a lot of resentment and anger and blaming other people, having gone through this experience. So it was all perfectly designed, truly.
How long did it take you to forgive them?
Um, I would say, there was a lot of people involved. So first, when I got out, I was in a place of a lot of shame and guilt. So that was my first experience. When I got out, I was feeling really guilty, and I slipped into like a really dark place. And that was when I understood why people commit suicide. I understood that very fully.
Were you guilty because of what you put your parents through, or what was the guilt? Where did that come
Well, I
from?
had, I had been living this party
Okay.
lifestyle, and I chose to do the landmark forum. Like I take responsibility. Like I created this perfect storm for me to, it was a storm. I was literally like a tornado.
Yeah.
Physically, mentally, spiritually, all of it. So, but being in the psych ward was it was scary and traumatizing, and um, we can get into that a little bit deeper, but it is really part of my mission. I do think as a community, we have got to create other support systems when somebody is in this state of being, so that, sending them on, off to a psych ward is like a worst case
Well, it's
scenario.
like prison with a bunch of
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
crazy people. I hate to say it. It
No, it
sounds
is. It
so
was like
insecure,
imagine a movie,
sensitive,
imagine
but
people, in a corner, talking to a wall like that. That is what I experienced, the live action version of that. Um, so yeah, so coming out of the hospital, I fell into a deep depression. I was on, again, a cocktail of pharmaceutical drugs. What was scary is going back to the psychiatrist and saying, what you have me on is not working. I don't feel good. And them just kind of throwing darts, and like, okay, well, we're going to try this now. We're going to try that. And
so you become a guinea pig.
totally, totally. And really feeling like incredibly disempowered, like, because through this container, it's like you diagnose somebody and then you prescribe them medication. Like, that's the protocol.
And you really know nothing about them
No,
or
I
their
mean I
past.
mean, somebody who has, like, a vitamin D deficiency can exhibit signs of anxiety and depression. Somebody who has parasites in their stomach, one of the symptoms is psychosis,
Mhm.
and there's none of that going on in the conventional psychiatric care
Yeah.
facilities. It's
Even tumors in the brain
right,
or yeah.
right, right. And the thing that I will say that, from a spiritual standpoint, was being there in the psych ward, and the other women that I was with, they were all prophets in my opinion. I mean, there were women there who were channeling information, seeing angels, talking to their ancestors. And so that, I think, is a really important conversation as well, is like, what is the difference between a schizophrenic and a clairvoyant?
I always have that question too.
Yeah.
I really do
Yeah.
because I believe even my ex, right, being
Mhm.
on drugs,
Mhm.
and he was in another dimension.
Yeah.
And me believing in another dimension and
Mhm.
knowing that drugs can take you to the other
Right.
dimension really freaked me out at
Yeah.
times because I'm like, he probably is seeing these
Yeah.
things. He'd
Yeah.
see demons. I'm like, yeah, you're walking around with demons. I'm sure you are.
Yeah.
You're
Well, the best description that I found about my experience is what's called the shamanic illness. So it's when, like, for example, if we all lived together in a tribe where there was a healer or a shaman, and I had my psychotic episode, the shaman, the medicine person, would know that I am the next generation of healer. And so they would, take me under their wing and teach me these ways of navigating these realms. Whereas, through the lens of Western medicine, I'm deemed, bipolar was the
well,
label that they wanted to
yeah,
use.
and I think Western medicine really wants to stifle us, right? I believe a lot of, I mean, if you watch any show and back in the day, religion wanted
Mhm.
to stifle you from having a relationship. Like, and nowadays, I mean, we just unfortunately had that shooting in Monterey Park, and they want to make it about gun control. It's like, what's happening up
Yeah.
here? What's happening in the mind? Don't get confused. Like it's all up here in the
Mhm.
mind, and
Mhm.
yeah, we need to start paying more attention to the mind, but
Yeah.
they don't want you to pay attention to the mind because there's so much power there too.
This is true. This is true.
Mhm.
And they don't lobotomize people anymore. It's not a practice that they do, but they do chemically lobotomize people.
Mhm.
And being
Absolutely.
released and being on all of those pharmaceutical drugs was so scary because I couldn't feel myself. It was like I was just a zombie. It was
Yeah.
so frightening. And so it was during an outpatient program where I was sharing about my experience, and this woman who I had never spoken to, I don't even know what her name is, and I never talked to her again. But she played such a pivotal role in my life where she looked at me and she said, "Jessica, you're an empath." And my whole body lit up. Like, I get goosebumps just talking about
Mm.
it. And I didn't know what that word meant,
See?
but I went home and I researched it, and there it describes what it's like to be Jessica. It's someone
Mhm.
who's highly sensitive, who can feel other people's emotions and energy and all of this stuff. And it was the first time that there was like a positive description of what I was going through versus the psychiatric system saying that I'm mentally ill.
Isn't it crazy? I mean, I felt the exact same way when I read it. I
I
was
know.
like, "That's it.
Yep.
Jeez,
Yep.
it's right
Yeah.
there. Like, what the hell?
Yeah.
How come it's taken so long
I
to
know.
figure it out?
I
Like,
know.
because people don't talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
They think you're crazy."
Well, the only person that I knew that I could speak to at the time from this perspective was my colleague's aunt was a Reiki master. And her name is Shaylin, and I have so much love towards her because she was like my lighthouse
Mhm.
in this time of my life. And so I called her and hysterically sobbing shared with her what I had experienced and how scary it was, and this word empath, and that's what I think I am. it's crazy now being on the other side
Yeah.
because I get these phone calls all the time, of people who have had psychotic episodes who don't want to continue in the same protocols and procedures of the psychiatric system, and they are
No.
looking at it from this integrative and holistic way. Um, but yeah, so I'm so grateful to her because she took me under her wing, and I would see her twice a week, and she taught me the language of energy. She taught me how to clear my energy field, how to ground my energy, how to decipher between what was mine versus somebody else's
Yes, that's the
emotions.
hardest.
And I slowly was able to wean myself off of all the pharmaceutical drugs. And
Beautiful.
from there, I just threw myself into learning as many different integrative and holistic healing modalities just so that I could keep myself
Mhm.
harmonized and healthy and not need to, use the pharmaceutical drugs. But it was meeting my husband that like really kind of took this up a notch where I started to be in service in this way. And he was a lot further along in his path than I was as far as his spiritual journey. And being from Guatemala, he, worked extensively with plant medicines
Yeah.
and sacred ceremony. And he was attending the University of Santa Monica and doing their spiritual psychology program. And he was the one that said to me, "You're a natural counselor." I've always been very transparent and very you know, honest with people about my experience. So over time, friends and family would send me people who were going through a spiritual crisis.
Mhm.
So I was constantly on the phone counseling people, but not with any
Getting
type
paid
of,
for it.
yeah, exactly. There was no exchange. So it was
Yeah.
incredibly draining.
Yeah.
And that's been a big lesson for me as a counselor is having boundaries because I do want to help all day long,
Yes.
as many people as I can. If I could just ease the suffering in a small way every day, I would. And I'm learning, how incredibly important it is to take excellent care of myself so
Yeah.
that I can serve.
Yes.
So yeah, he was the one that really reflected back to me that I was naturally gifted in this way. And he, God bless him, he encouraged me he's like, "You've got to start your own practice, like make it official." And so I did on January 1st of 2020. I've
Yes.
officially started my practice.
And I can attest to how amazing you are
Thank
because
you.
you brought me down a few times. It's that Reiki energy.
Yeah. But not knowing that we were going into the pandemic, and so I've been very busy, because
Yeah.
we have experienced a collective trauma. And if you go through your insurance provider and you look up, a therapist, they're typically booked out, 6 months.
Right.
And
Which
so
is horrible.
yeah,
My nephew was waiting to see the
that makes me
therapist.
sick to my
It
stomach.
makes me sick to my
Yeah.
stomach too.
Yeah.
That's why also I want people to be able to have these conversations
Right.
with others, with their friends, with their family,
Right.
because if you're able to not have shame and to be
Yeah.
able to have just a regular conversation,
Right.
we could heal a lot of people without even needing
Yeah.
therapy. I
Well, that's
mean,
the first thing
it's
when
healing ourselves, right?
absolutely.
Knowing that we have the power to heal
Yes, yeah,
ourselves.
and that is the foundation of my practice is I want people to be empowered to self-counsel, to
Hmm.
self-heal, and when I do consultations with people over the phone, especially if they're in crisis, I just go back to the basics that like, it's incredibly important, and most of us were not taught to, like, we weren't taught how to ground our energy, how to put our bare feet on the earth,
Simple,
and literally, like,
major.
connect in that way. I mean, that's like 80% of the issue is just being so disconnected from Mother Nature, disconnected from our soul, from our spirit, from our heart. Like being able to like intimately talk to yourself,
Hmm.
and to give voice to your fear, give voice to
Hmm.
your sadness,
And respect your little
your
girl
little
and your
girl or
little
your little
boy.
boy. Yeah,
Yeah, like
yeah,
men will never say it
yeah,
probably, but I mean, really. I mean, I that's how I got through
yeah,
my little girl.
yeah.
So to a lot of people I seem childlike. Well, yeah, because I was depending on her for that moment. And
Yeah.
I now recently I thanked her and I put her away. She's on on my nightstand,
Hmm.
and but she's still there. But now, like, okay, now the woman can come out again and like,
Well, that's the thing that I think I love. I love Carolyn Mason, her sacred contracts because she talks about archetypal medicine and this understanding that we are multifaceted. Like you have your little girl and your original innocence, and you have your
yes,
wise woman, and you have your
yes.
your boss and you
Those are all
have
the
your
freaking people we talk to all day in our head. It's
and the
all these
more we're
different.
connected to them and the more we have healthy conversations, the more we can have a healthy embodiment of that, you
Yes,
know?
yes, I talk to myself all day long, and I
Yeah.
laughed just the other day because I'm like, "Man, all these different people, they're all me.
Yep.
They're just different ages of
Mhm.
me." And
Mhm.
and we have straight up conversation.
Different colors, different textures, different
Yes,
facets, like you're a
yes.
mother, you're a friend, you're a daughter, you're a businesswoman, you're a lover, all these different beautiful emanations of you.
And it's unfortunate, I think nowadays people forget, like, that is all of you, and it's
Yes.
okay to be all of those
Yes.
things, like, you
Yes.
don't have to pick one,
No.
and you need that child, you need that little girl or that little boy, you need to
Yeah.
still have fun, and of
Yes.
course we need to be responsible, but
Right.
you have to nurture them too,
It's
otherwise it's
imperative.
yes, it's
Yeah.
otherwise you'll lose your mind
Yep.
because you get caught up in the world,
Yeah.
which is very crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. So I share my story openly as, especially people who are going to work with me as clients or students. I share not because, you know, this is like to impress people or anything. Like I share because what I do for a living is not a hobby. Like this
Right.
is my ministry. I feel incredibly privileged to be able to do this every day. It's an honor that people trust me to hold space for them.
Mhm.
I witness people in their most vulnerable, and it's I'm just I'm so nourished and so like overflowing with goodness being able to do this for a living. It's like I remember the first time when I really started to like have clients every day, and my husband and I took like a little weekend away together, and we were driving back home. It was Sunday, and I had a full day that next Monday, and I looked at him and I was like, "Oh, I'm so excited to go to work tomorrow."
Yeah, I love
And it
that.
was the first time that I'm like, "Wow, this is how lucky am I?"
Yes.
How lucky am I? I feel so blessed.
And more people need to find that.
Yeah,
They do. That's service for
yeah,
me.
yeah.
My job is my job. I love my job because that
Mhm,
is also a part of service.
mhm.
You're serving your client to
Yeah,
find them their needs. But
mhm.
I mean, the reality is service is like, it fills my
Yeah,
soul. And when people are saying that they're hurting, it's like,
absolutely,
go serve
absolutely,
because it just puts life in perspective. I mean, it
100%.
can always be so much worse. And, it cracks me up. When I was little, my mom had a favorite book she'd read to us.
Uh-huh.
It could be worse. It could be worse. This man had his newspaper, the bird came and took the newspaper, and then a bird came and took him and dropped him
Yeah,
in the ocean, but every time it could always be
could be
worse.
worse.
Could always be worse, and it could always
It's
be
all about
worse.
perspective.
Yes, and I believe that what you went through, what I went through,
Mhm.
that's what allows us to even hold more space for these people because
Oh,
we feel
100%.
it, we know it, we know what it's like.
Yeah.
Like we can honestly say, I know what it's like being there.
I mean, it I think it's Ram Dass who says this, but it's a spiritual principle that, like, with great suffering comes immense grace,
Yeah.
grace and compassion.
I prayed for grace.
Mm.
I did.
Yeah,
And it's like they say, watch what you wish for, watch
yeah,
what you pray for. I
yeah.
prayed for grace and
Mhm,
I got the suffering to
mhm.
get the grace, but I got the grace.
Yeah,
I could honestly say, like, now I know what grace is
yeah.
because I did hate my husband.
Mhm,
I was angry,
mhm.
but then it was like, no, come in love. And when I came in love, I got everything I
Yeah.
wanted.
Because that hatred, that resentment, that judgment, whatever we're carrying towards somebody else or to an experience, like I was in a place where I'm like, I can't believe that, my family sent me away. There was definitely a point in my life where it felt like this was a cruel thing that had happened to me.
Hmm.
And like, how could God
Oh,
allow
yeah.
this to happen to me? And now looking back, it's the most important thing that ever happened to me.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be the woman that I am today if that hadn't happened.
And it's funny because you hear that often, right? I wouldn't be who I am today. And it sounds so cliche, but it's so
It's so
flippin'
true.
true.
It's so true.
I mean, without the trials, how could we hold space for people? How
Yeah.
could we understand what they're going through? I
Mhm.
mean, me living through my own like my own issue, and then living through my nephews. Now
Mhm.
I multiple.
Yep.
I can come in multiple
Yep.
spaces for them.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So yeah, our trials are everything.
Yeah.
So how did you get through it then?
Um, make me cry. My family was incredibly supportive of me. I joke that the only difference between me and like a crazy person that you see on the sidewalk, talking to themselves, is that I had a family who advocated for me. And my parents came together and they did the best that they could to get me the help and the support that I needed. They brought me into their house and took care of me. Um, my sister, I'll just sob.
Yeah.
Julia is like,
Ugh, everything.
yeah. And I remember my mom would like, there was a chair like this next to my bed. I was staying at my parents' house. My mom would just sleep in the chair next to my bed to make sure that I didn't hurt myself because I was in
Wow.
such a dark place. And now, being a mother, like I can't, it's just like, oh my God, I still have those moments of feeling really bad for putting my family through
Yeah.
that. Um, and and it was divinely orchestrated.
Yeah.
It was divinely orchestrated. And now
Isn't
being on the other end of having people call me who have been hospitalized or who are in an active psychotic episode and being able to hold space for them from a place of experience, like
Mhm.
I know. I
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And talking to the family too, that from
Yes.
a different place that your son or daughter is not broken or mentally ill, that they're going
Yes.
through the most powerful initiation of their lives. And if when they come through the other side, that they will be of great service to their community just as I'm serving my
Oh, I
community.
love that. I love that, and I truly do believe that.
Yeah.
That's where most people find their why,
Right.
or because they've come through such a tough, dark space.
Yeah.
It's like now they want to live and they want to see everything and they want to do everything for the
Yeah.
most part, if they
Yeah.
become healthy after the fact.
Totally.
And if you could tell not your 18-year-old self, if you could tell anybody watching right now,
Mhm.
um, anything, what would you want them to know?
If there's somebody out there who's suffering right now, whether it's mental, emotional, spiritual suffering, if there is, something that's tormenting you, ask for help. Seek out counsel, find a therapist or a counselor or a spiritual facilitator, advisor, anybody, a friend, talk to somebody about what you're going through. And this is the most important thing that you are being graced with. This is happening for you. It's not happening to you. And when you get the help that you need and when you start to heal, when you start to, go back in time and find those lost parts of you that have been betrayed or forgotten or hurt or abandoned and you bring them home into your the unconditional loving of your heart, um, having that level of intimacy with yourself, being able to sit with the your deepest fears and your deepest pain and being able to love yourself through that is what we're all craving. It's not outside of ourselves. It's not the love of another person that is going to fix you. It helps having the support, having friends and family in a tribe is so important, and it's our relationship with ourselves that that holds the deepest, most profound healing that we could possibly imagine.
And you can't run from that.
You can't run from that.
Mm-mm. I
Cannot.
was a runner. I was a runner. And I trip out today because in the past I would have ran
Mhm.
from, my ex. I would have left and just but when I think about it, it's like I couldn't do it.
Yeah. Well, it's it's designed this is earth school. There's no
Yeah.
getting away from your spiritual curriculum. Like it will
Yeah.
just in spiritual psychology, the term is called stackers, where it's like a person or an event that that is designed to elicit your wounding, your material. So it's like the people that activate you the most through the lens of spiritual contracts. There's this concept that are the people who challenge us the most in this lifetime are actually the souls that love us the most. And that they agreed before incarnating that they would play this character of like the villain in our lives so that we would grow and evolve in consciousness.
I hear that often and I still can't buy into that.
It's a tough one to
I'm like, I
swallow.
still can't buy. I'm like,
But
who
what's
wants
the
to come here
alternative?
poor? I don't know.
But what's the alternative? Like, think of the person that's like your ex-husband, for
Mhm.
example. The alternative is that you are a victim to what he's done to you.
Oh, well, not I'm saying for him. Like, I don't know why he'd wanna come as to be the person he is today. You
I
know
mean,
what I'm
I
saying?
do believe in past lives and there's something we're all reconciling things. So
I definitely believe in
yeah.
past lives.
Yeah.
I believe I know that I believe I was, I think I
A
was a
madam. We've talked
yeah,
about
I
this.
was a
You have
madam.
you have madam energy.
swear. In a saloon, like,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yep.
That's the craziest thing, but when I was telling you earlier too, when I told my ex, I believe, like, we had a past life. Well, he's high, like, he's really believing this, he took
Yeah.
it to, like, the next level, but, I mean, I really did believe it, like, so, and then that was the thing with church too.
Mhm.
They're always trying to stifle your beliefs,
Mhm.
but you can't run from your soul.
Mm-mm.
Like, you can't run from, like, what you know in your
Yeah.
soul, and
Yeah.
and that was always my biggest battle.
Yeah.
Like, now everybody talks about angels, but I
Mhm.
was always talking about angels.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about that too, like the Bible thumping and the dogma of like, there's only one way to have a relationship with God. And
Yeah.
and I know in my bones the most damaging thing that you can do to a person is to tell them that the way that they worship their God is wrong.
Right. I totally agree.
So
Yes.
and this is, from like from an indigenous wisdom standpoint, like getting back to like shamanic illness, like there is there's soul loss when someone experiences trauma, and there's religious trauma. Like that's a really big thing that we're
Oh,
all healing together as a
I have
community.
major religious trauma being Catholic.
Yeah.
There's a lot of taboos in
Yeah.
Catholicism.
Yeah.
And me being a seer and an empath, and
Right.
I thought I was going to hell. Like,
Right.
God forbid I read my own cards or something,
Yeah.
which I do, but
Right.
that's me. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not telling you to do it. I get the you have to be careful, right? You
Mhm.
have to have a connection in order to do that, and
Mhm.
know where your base is,
Mhm.
because you can open yourself up to the darkness.
Mhm.
But there's also so much power
Mhm.
when you do know,
Mhm.
and you know yourself.
Well, and I think that's the thing. This is I've been contemplating this for a long time now around darkness. And doing the line of work that I do, and sitting in plant medicine ceremonies, I've seen a lot. Being
Mhm.
in a psych ward, I've seen some pretty dark shit.
Yeah.
And my inquiry for the last like 3 years has been, what is the difference between darkness and evil? Because the womb is dark, and that's where babies are created.
Mhm.
The soil is dark, and that's where seeds are planted and they grow.
Right.
So darkness, there's nothing wrong with darkness. What I'm learning is that there's a healthy expression of darkness, and then there's a distorted expression of darkness.
Mhm.
And what I find is a huge detriment, especially in specific spiritual communities, is this like love and light all the time kind of form of spiritual bypassing, and not doing the descent, not doing the shadow work, not going into
Oh,
your
the
own
darkness.
darkness, your
Yeah,
ugliness,
yeah,
and things like
yeah.
that. And what I found, especially doing couples counseling, what I found is that if you don't have a healthy relationship with your dark side, then it's going to come out in a distorted way,
Mhm.
you
True.
know? So the parts that feel the most uncomfortable, the parts that feel the scariest, the ugliest inside,
Mhm.
that is the most important place to excavate, and to get support doing that. Like spiritual psychology for me is the most important um training that I've ever been a part of, because it created it gives a framework and a container to navigate life. Like we were never taught what to do with grief. We were never
No.
taught what to do with rage, like
Mhm.
in ancient Irish practices, there was I think it's called culling, where when someone dies, you go outside and hysterically wail. Like it'll chill your bones to hear women wailing outside, and we don't do that in our Western culture anymore. We
Right.
don't allow ourselves to grieve in community together in a ceremonial way.
That's true. And it's important.
Yeah.
And we need it.
Yes.
We do.
Yeah.
I get my sister, when my nephew passed, she didn't want anybody crying. She had to keep it together, man.
Yeah.
She had to put a service together and everything. And
Mhm.
it's her baby, right?
Mhm.
But we needed to cry. I mean,
Yeah.
we'd end up on the porch crying together,
Yeah.
we'd wipe our tears, go back inside. But
Mhm.
yeah, you need to cry together.
Yeah. I have this
It's
quote that crying is a natural bodily function. When you suppress your tears, you become emotionally constipated. So
yes.
when I do a consultation with somebody, that's the first thing I ask was, when was the last time that you cried? And I don't mean like a couple tears. I
Yeah.
mean snot running down your chest, fetal position,
Yeah.
hysterically crying.
Well, I let myself do that this morning.
Good. I'm proud of you.
Thank you. I was like, just do it. I'm all I had to, but I was nervous
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
grateful,
all
and
of it.
I'm
Yeah.
like, "Wow, I'm doing this. I'm
Yeah.
really doing it." And
Yeah.
then the way God made it happen was really
Mhm.
cool too, like finding the space and then
Yeah.
you and just others willing to share their story. And honestly, when I started asking people, it was like, "I've been wanting to.
It's such a relief
Thank
to be
you." Like,
asked. Yeah.
yeah, and but you don't know where and you don't know with who
Right.
and maybe if you'd feel comfortable, but really going through what I went through
Mhm.
makes others feel safe
Yeah.
sharing their story with
Yeah.
me. So it's a blessing.
Totally.
It's a blessing to want to do it, to be able to do it, and to have others willing to do it as
Yeah.
well. So thank you for being
Well,
here. I
thank you for being that
appreciate you.
person that you're so accepting and allowing of people to share like the full expression of what they are, the good, the bad, the ugly, the taboo. And I really feel that this is an important healing that we're doing inside of our community. It's like though we talked about like the family secrets and the things that like,
Hmm.
oh, we don't talk about that. Like it creates this cancer in families and in communities.
Well, it
And
makes
so
it seem like there's something wrong with it,
right.
and there's nothing wrong with it.
No.
It's natural. It's a
Yeah.
part of life.
Yes.
People have nervous breakdowns. People want to die. Some try, and some succeed,
Yeah.
unfortunately. But the conversations have to be had.
Right, because how else are we gonna heal it if we can't even look
Exactly.
at it? Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
Yes. You can't save a bird if you don't take care of it.
yeah, yeah,
And that's taking care of ourselves and our
yes,
soul.
yeah. So thank you for creating this platform, and thank you for asking me to share my
Oh
story.
my gosh, you're my bestie.
I love you.
Okay, so what else? Where do you see yourself in 5, 10 years?
Ooh la la. So my husband and I just bought this beautiful house
I
and
love your
property
home.
on the border of Upland and Rancho, and it feels like such a huge responsibility because we have almost an acre of land, and um, I'm learning. We're learning to like garden and to grow
Yeah.
our own food and to have a compost and things that it seems silly. Like I should know how to do this, but we don't.
Yeah, well,
Like
you don't know what you don't know if you've
yeah, yeah.
never had it. How are you gonna know how to
So
compost if you never had a garden?
yeah, so I see what feels really important to me is bringing back like the the circle, the sacred circle. So like I host women's circles on the solstices and the equinoxes just to
Love them.
encourage that getting back into rhythm with Mother Nature. And that feels really comfortable to me. I feel like the next phase is, my husband and I are very proud of the marriage that we have, and we work incredibly hard to have just a really beautiful, sacred union. And I came across this quote when my sister had her baby, and it was that it takes a village to raise a child, but
Mhm.
it takes healthy, strong marriages to create a village. And so what I
That's
see,
huge.
doing the couples counseling that I'm doing too is like if we have healthy couples and healthy families, then we can have a healthy community.
Yes.
And so like the health of my community feels really important to me, and I see our land and our space being a place to gather in communion together. So I
Yes.
see that happening, and I see you there,
Yeah, always.
and yeah, all of us just
And
growing and loving on each other. That's what's
yeah,
important.
that's like I said before, that's what we've lost.
Yeah,
It's just community.
yeah,
A lot of people have it in sports and stuff, but even then it's a distraction, right? When we get together and we talk.
yes,
And it's quiet.
yes.
And sometimes we light some sage and we do Reiki on each whatever. Like
Hmm.
it's more love
Yeah,
and conversation
yeah,
and where, you're at in life as
yeah.
opposed to,
And it's
you
so
know.
medicinal.
Yeah.
It's so
Yeah.
medicinal. Like
Yeah.
the phrase of, there's immunity in community. I
Mhm.
really believe that to be true.
Yes, it's necessary and needed, just like these
Yes.
conversations.
Yes.
And your children,
I love my kiddos.
what do you hope that they learn from you?
Mm. Oh God. Mm. Well, for my daughter, Isabel Lou, we shared, in her threshold ceremony into adulthood, the thing that I shared with her is that I wish I had known at age 18 um, that I alone am responsible for my well-being. And the foundation of my well-being is in my relationship with my little girl, my internal little girl,
Mhm.
and checking in with her and loving on her and having, communication with her. And so I hope that my daughter knows that she, like her bonus mom, is a natural counselor. and that what she's experienced in her life, the darkness and the ugliness, that makes her incredibly strong, and she's incredibly powerful. And I see her, um, serving through her art in that way, helping to ease the suffering on the planet. And for our son, I hope that he knows that he can be the full spectrum, full expression of who and what he is. That he doesn't need to just be one version of himself, and
Yes.
that he is wise beyond his years.
He's a healer for
He
sure.
he definitely
Such a
has
sweet soul. Like,
a lot of medicine, and
so
so
both of them.
mhm.
Uh, oh, I forgot my question where I was going with that. As a family, you guys, oh, I know where I was going. I want you to be able to talk about Prosperity
Yeah.
Homes before we finish
Yes.
up because that's like, dear to both of our
Yes.
hearts, right? And
Yeah.
huge.
Mhm.
We go to Ensenada and we build homes for families there, migrant families. They pay $7,000 to purchase the land, and then we go and build homes. So, Jessica, why don't you tell them how many you've built and the kids already, like, have built multiple homes already?
Yeah, so they have a mortgage that they pay, and we
Okay.
raise it costs a minimum $7,000 to
Okay.
build the house. That's what we raise to build the home, and over the years, we've been adding more. We work with, we do it's solar power, we do, like, little gardens and things like that, but, um, so this all started because of Jeremiah Forrest, so we just have to shout out to our brother
Mhm.
Jeremiah Forrest. He is our soul brother, we love him so much. He's played such a special role in my life, and so he created Prosperity Homes, and yeah, we go together as a family, as a community, and we go and we build homes for families in need in Ensenada, typically migrant workers who have come up from like South Mexico, Oaxaca area, with the promise of getting wages and a
Mhm.
home, and um, yeah, it's horrendous. The migrant camps that we go and visit is shocking.
Tragic.
Yeah, it's tragic. So, but again, being in service as a family is it's such a wonderful thing.
Oh,
So, and
incredible.
like you expressed, when you're especially when you're in a dark place yourself, when you're in a um, the dark night of the soul,
Mhm.
being of service is like the lighthouse. Like it's your saving grace. It will pull you out of any dark place that you're in.
So how can someone get involved if they'd like to join?
So we are always looking for sponsors. That would be like the number one thing is we're looking for sponsors. So whether you're like a business owner or an organization and you want to sponsor a build, it's an amazing team building experience to come with your colleagues and to go and build the home
It's
in a
been
weekend.
incredible.
It's
It is
incredible.
so much fun to
Yeah.
go build houses. I mean, it's enlightening, it's an awakening, it's just so much. There's so much. I mean, you can't even put it into words, but you have to go. The community, meeting the people like Jessica, it's changed my life. Building the homes, meeting the families. You have to go. It will change your life. If you're having any trouble, I highly, highly recommend it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I think that's it,
Thank
Jessica.
you, friend.
Thank you again. Thank you guys for joining. We're so happy that you came to hear us out, and I hope you got something out of it. And, hope to catch you next time. See you soon.